Iraq's crumbling under the force of a renegade al-Qaeda splinter group that's sweeping the north. Now, the U.S. president is considering airstrikes and drone attacks. The so-called Islamic State of Iraq and Syria insurgent group have captured the whole province of Nineveh. In this video, you can see some 3,000 Iraqi soldiers surrendering to the militants, and now their sights are in Baghdad, and fighting's being reported just 50 kilometers from the capital. The UN says that hundreds of civilians have been slaughtered by the insurgents. Archie's Chikan looks at what effect America's offer of help to tackle the militants might have.
Militants with the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria are now in control of large parts of Iraq, including its second largest city of Mosul. They're now aiming at the capital, Baghdad. The fight against Assad in Syria has bolstered these Islamist militants and gave them new resources. And the sectarian feud in Iraq has allowed the group to gain momentum and recruits. The sectarian war in Iraq broke out after the U.S. invasion in 2003 and has been a source of constant violence ever since. Now the U.S. may invade again to stop the onslaught of the Islamist militants.
My team is working around the clock to identify how we can provide the most effective assistance to them. I don't rule out anything because we do have a stake in making sure that these jihadists are not getting a permanent foothold in either Iraq or Syria, for that matter.
Vice President Joe Biden calls the newest graduates of the Air Force Academy strategic thinkers as well as warriors, and the future of the New World Order.
It allows us to refocus our intelligence and military assets and resources to other parts of the world where they are needed, where we face new challenges. This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. I believe we, and particularly you, your class, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century in a way consistent with American interest and the common interest.
During an event honoring the 223rd anniversary of Poland's constitution last night, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said we are seeing a new 21st century world order being built, and although there are conflicts and complications, there's still hope.
I think what's more hopeful, and maybe than any other time in the history of the world, is that we have more opportunities, and more possibilities, and more resources.
We meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States, and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. I congratulate you on taking your place on the long gray line. But the world is changing with accelerating speed. This presents opportunity, but also new dangers. It will be your generation's task to respond to this new world.
Over the last 2 years, journalists and activists have been fighting a specific provision in the annual National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, through a lawsuit called Hedges v. Obama. It's called Section 1021B, otherwise known as the Indefinite Detention Clause, which gives the U.S. military the right to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens anywhere in the world, including right here in America.
This not only attacks your First Amendment rights, it attacks your Fifth Amendment rights, your Due Process Clause, because this gives not the U.S. government, but the U.S. military the right to detain you and indefinitely with no due process.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Now, when I was in America, I don't often say this, but I might as well say it here tonight. My driver, who has carried all the prophetic preachers across America before me, told me, he said, every time we get to a bridge, you watch. And we went through 38 states in 2.5 weeks, and every bridge we went near, there were men working underneath it, putting in steel girders. He said, that is for the United Nations tanks that are going to come in and take over America shortly. Is everybody clear what I'm saying tonight? This goes on tape. The whole of America will be inundated with United Nations troops. In fact, they're training now.
Heavy artillery rocked downtown Tampa today as military gunships and helicopters roared by the convention center. Now, this was all part of the annual Special Forces Operations Convention. While it wasn't a real invasion, our Chris Trankman says it looked about as real as it could get.
This was different. This was a first for me. Usually no one sees what we do.
The display featured Apache helicopters speeding overhead, while bigger Black Hawk choppers carried highly trained operatives as part of a make-believe invasion.
In the distance, they must travel to the target.
The spectacle rivals any show.